I came home early thinking I was about to walk into a finished house. What I didn't expect was a stranger in a plush robe casually pouring herself a glass of wine from my kitchen counter like she'd been paying the mortgage all along. It felt unreal, like one of those late-night stories you tell friends that starts with, "You won't believe this," except this was happening on my porch. And the woman in question was leaning on my island perfectly at ease, as if she'd always belonged there. 8 months before that evening, I won the house at a probate auction. It looked awful from the curb, paint peeling, hedges dead, the kind of place people point at and say money pit. But the foundation was solid, the roof had been replaced not long before, and it was priced like a miracle. I had a contract across the state and couldn't be there in person. So I hired a contractor I trusted, set up automatic HOA payments and property tax autopay, and checked in with weekly video calls while the interior got gutted and rebuilt. The plan was simple: make the place mine, do it right. Come home to something that felt like a beginning. Pulling up that late afternoon, everything looked as promised. The new paint caught the golden hour. The landscaping company had done miracles. I reached for my phone to unlock the smart deadbolt, and the lock didn't answer. At first I thought I hadn't connected properly. Then I looked through the front window and saw furniture that wasn't mine, the kind of expensive patio pieces they use in catalogs arranged in my living room like a staged shoot. On the island sat a half-empty bottle of wine and a single glass. My stomach dropped. A woman emerged from the hall, robe hair in that effortless bun that takes effort to look casual, glasses on the tip of her nose, and she walked into the kitchen like she was settling in for a long weekend. When she saw me on my own porch, she didn't scurry or apologize. She opened the door, slid the bolt, and told me to leave. Calm, firm, completely unembarrassed. She explained, as if reciting a script, that the HOA had requisitioned the house for community use, that she was house-sitting to keep squatters out, and that if I had business with the association, I should submit a formal request. Laughing was the first thing that escaped me, because what else do you do when a stranger telling you to vacate your own home sounds like satire? But I kept my phone steady and started recording. You learn quick there are moments when you need evidence more than outrage. Later that night, when I reviewed the footage from the little Ring camera I'd tucked under the eaves, the joke evaporated. There she was on tape, driving in with another woman, trying the front door, circling the back, and slipping inside through an open window. The camera caught dozens of trips, boxes, chairs, suitcases, and on other days, 6 people arriving in the morning and staying for hours, as if the place were a little clubhouse. She had replaced my smart lock with a traditional deadbolt, set up linens in the master suite, and started stacking HOA folders in what I learned later was a meeting pile. She wasn't house-sitting, she was moving in. I called the non-emergency line and sat on the curb while 2 officers pulled up. The older officer was steady, patient. The younger one was direct. I pulled up the deed and the closing documents on my phone and showed them the payment confirmations for the HOA dues. When they asked the woman inside for authorization, she sputtered and then announced with the kind of certainty that makes people nod without thinking that she was the HOA president and had full authority to act. That confidence evaporated when the officers asked for documentation. Was disorienting salon-grade skincare in the guest bath, a rack of designer clothes in the bedroom, stacks of HOA violation letters in a room next to my office. She'd been using my kitchen island as an office table for neighborhood business. The very place I planned to eat my first breakfast back had become a hub for other people's meetings. I called a lawyer that night. I called a second the next morning. The third one, sharp, amused, and efficient, said, "Don't touch anything. We're going to document it all." We hired forensic cleaners to photograph and bag items, preserving the scene like evidence. We filed a civil complaint for trespass and fraud. The HOA board called an emergency meeting and, to their credit, at least invited me. I went. That meeting is seared into my memory: fluorescent lights, cheap coffee folding chairs, and a room full of people who looked as if they'd been told a terrible joke too. The vice president, a man who'd waved hello when I jogged past his house, kept rubbing his forehead. An auditor climbed to the front and projected spreadsheets showing payments, and slowly the pattern emerged. Small invoices paid to vendors that didn't exist, reimbursements for clubhouse repairs that were coded to a personal account. Seemingly trivial acts, repeated and rationalized, added up into a tidy little stream of embezzlement. This was the twist, the thing that turned it from an entitled neighbor squatting into a criminal pattern. The woman who wrote fines for slightly overgrown hedges and frightened volunteers into silence had been padding her own accounts. Fake invoices, shadow vendors, personal reimbursements, 2 years' worth of bookkeeping made a very ugly picture. The district attorney's office took the case. What followed was less cinematic than satisfying. There were subpoenas and forensic accounting depositions where neighbors finally named the fear that had kept them quiet in a steady accumulation of evidence so methodical it didn't need flourish. She tried to settle. She offered partial repayment and a promise to do the right thing. I wanted accountability, not apologies framed to keep her lifestyle intact. We pressed forward. In court, the ring footage was plain and damning: my kitchen, my island, my wine glass, an unedited slice of truth. The legal outcome wasn't about revenge. She faced civil judgments that required restitution, criminal counts that resulted in probation and community service, and the civil awards meant she had to liquidate assets to begin to cover damages. Her husband filed for divorce not long after. The same woman who had carried herself like royalty in a neighborhood of nervous citizens suddenly had to account for receipts and bank transfers. Watching the scales tip toward fairness felt honest and, yes, quietly satisfying. After that, the neighborhood changed. People who used to avoid board meetings because of fear came back with questions. They replaced passwords, hired an independent forensic accountant, and tightened governance. There were casseroles at my door, neighborly referrals, and a little old man who'd always looked cowed at HOA gatherings knocked with a handwritten note. "Thank you for making us feel like we belong again." Those notes mattered. I used part of the settlement to seed a small legal assistance fund for homeowners facing abusive associations. If there's one thing the whole episode taught me, it's that bureaucracy can be weaponized at a small scale. Little offices of power left unchecked can become tools for petty tyranny. The remedy isn't always a courtroom. Sometimes it's transparency, regular audits, and neighbors willing to ask for documentation before they assume authority is legitimate. But when systematic theft and intimidation are present, the law is the lever that undoes a rotten structure. There were small human rewards, too. I reinstalled the smart lock, repainted the guest room that she'd whimsically repainted without asking, and yes, I installed a fountain in the front yard that lights up at dusk. It's ridiculous and beautiful, and when the lights turn on, people pause in the evening to watch it ripple, a silly little beacon that says, "This street is ours again." So here's what I want to leave you with, and what always lights up the comments when someone in a position of local power becomes a petty tyrant. Do you push for criminal charges, or do you pursue community-level accountability and reform? Is financial ruin a fair consequence for embezzling from a small homeowners association? Or is it disproportionate? Share your stories. HOA, horror tales, victories where neighbors banded together, regrets where silence let something fester. I read every comment, and if you think I overreacted, say so plainly. Debate it, argue it. Tell me what you'd do. If this rattled you or made you smile, subscribe and drop your experience below. Real conversations, change real streets, and I want to hear yours.